One tweet from President-elect Donald Trump is sending shockwaves regarding U.S. nuclear policy. Now his communications team is trying to clarify just what Trump's message about expanding America's nuclear capacity really meant. KCAL 9 political reporter Bryan joins us now with more on the questions surrounding the latest tweet.
Lena, amazing how much turmoil one tweet can create. It really is. Tonight, President-elect Donald Trump has created quite a stir around the world with a tweet he sent out today that contained the word expand and the words nuclear capability. You can just imagine the alarms that set off in Washington, Russia, China, California, and most of the rest of the world. In what may be the tweet heard round the world, Donald Trump may have signaled a massive shift in American nuclear policy. The United States, he tweeted, must greatly strengthen and expand its nuclear capability until such time as the world comes to its senses regarding nukes. Even more interesting or menacing, the Trump tweet came shortly after Russian President Vladimir Putin declared his country needs to bolster its nuclear arsenal.
We need to strengthen the military potential of strategic nuclear forces, especially with missile complexes that can reliably penetrate any existing and prospective missile defense systems.
I think the tweet was ambiguous, and it was hard to figure out what exactly he meant.
If nothing else, the Trump tweet demonstrates how difficult and dangerous it can be to discuss sensitive topics like nuclear weapons in 140-character tweets.
In nuclear diplomacy and in diplomacy in general, you want to be clear most of the time, especially with your adversaries, about what you're willing to do and not willing to do.
The soon-to-be Trump White House communications director tried to clarify, saying Trump was referring to the threat of nuclear proliferation and the critical need to prevent it, a statement which did not address the critical point, namely, what does Trump mean when he tweeted about expanding U.S. nuclear capability? In a satellite interview from Washington, Joseph Cirincione, president of Plowshares Fund, an organization that promotes the elimination of nuclear weapons, told me that's the word that is so worrisome.
He says we have to expand the nuclear capability. That's the word that everybody's focused in on. That sounds like more that, and when Russia and the United States, who have 95% of all the nuclear weapons in the world, both start talking at the same time about strengthening, expanding nuclear capability, that's a message to other countries: start your engines. China only has 200 nuclear weapons. What are they thinking?
Building more nuclear warheads would be a complete reversal of 30 years of U.S. policy, including the policy of the outgoing Obama administration.
First, reducing our stockpile and our launchers through New START. Number two, diminishing the role of nuclear weapons in our security strategy.
Trump himself has made some contradictory statements about nuclear weapons.
Look, nuclear should be off the table, but would there be a time when it could be used? Possibly.
Okay, so on the other hand, Cirincione says maybe Trump is using the threat of expanding the nukes as a bargaining chip to get Russia to agree to further reductions.
If Donald Trump does that, that alone will ensure his place in history. That could be the deal of a lifetime.
Now, a Trump advisor says what he meant in the tweet is we're going to expand our nuclear readiness. She told MSNBC tonight that Trump is not trying to change a policy through Twitter and is not making new policy on expanding nuclear weapons. Lena?